Hurricane Melissa, Category 5 Superstorm, Jamaica devastated. Part 2.
This is the motivator here. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. And I've got someone here who is an example of success is ours for the taking. A man who doesn't relent. He's unrelenting, focused, determined. He truly lives up to the essence of who we are as a people. Determined, focused, visionary, but full of compassion. I have with us a true national institution here in Britain. And his face is recognized, I know, by the majority of those of you who are watching or listening. Indeed, you'll hear his voice at the moment, listening to this podcast. But I'm not going to say his name. As you know, that's not my custom here. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself, say who he is. He might want to tell you his family status, hey, who knows, okay? But he might share with us either his organizations or share with us some ideas of successes for the past 12 months. Over to you, sir, comrade, brother. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to come along to your podcast. As you know, you and I have had very many discussions on air, off air, late nights, and long hours around some of the most fundamental issues affecting our community. You continue to do your job, which is to broadcast and amplify those initiatives that you believe are making a material difference to our community. You challenge in relation to black leadership, so people are held to account. And you yourself has been as consistent as I've been in relation to ensuring that you, whatever you do, focus on trying to make the best strategic choices and priorities for our community. So I'm delighted to be on your show, Mr. Investigator Motivator. But my name's Lee Jasper. I'm a born and bred British activist here, hailing from the northern tundra of Greater Manchester, and an economic migrant to London some 40 odd years ago now. And I'm a father, I'm married, people know me on my social media, my wonderful wife, Jacqueline, who's Jamaican. We have 9 children. We have 8 grandchildren. And now we have 5 great-grandchildren.
You are blessed. You are blessed.
I'm blessed.
And your wife's Jamaican, and you're on your side is your
my father's from a little village up in the misty romantic hills, the conical mystic hills of St. Catherine. It's a little village there called Boyce Content, where it's a bit like Tennessee or one of those areas. Everybody's got the same surname. They're all McCullers. not necessarily all cousins. It's just that the plantation McCullough was there, and so lots of people adopted. It doesn't mean they're related. They're not, obviously. So yeah, but it's a tiny little village. When it rains, you can't get down the hill. You can't get up the hill. It's quaint. It's the most noise you'll hear is the cockerel at 6:30, 5:30 in the morning. It's quiet. None of the sort of noise of Kingston or the city. I just find it so relaxed. It's hard to get to, but once you get there, you're on top of the world in Jamaica, and it's wonderful. So he comes from Boyce Content. My mother's half English, half African. Her father was from Sierra Leone and came to Britain in 1896. As a merchant. Actually came as a stowaway on a ship at age 15, and they caught him at Liverpool and they deported him. And he went straight back to Sierra Leone and got on the very next ship and came back on the next ship. He arrived in Liverpool. He stayed there for a little while, and then they went to Scotland, as most Africans did. There was a growing African community in the early 1900s in Scotland. But of course, he had to escape Scotland after 1919, where we know that there were significant race riots across the country, which were led by and fomented by left-wing communists in Scotland who wanted British jobs for British workers. So my grandfather fled the racist violence that unfortunately in 1919 cost lots of people their lives, Charles Wotton, people in Cardiff, Liverpool, Manchester, Scotland, all over, and relocated to Manchester. And that's where my story begins, I guess.
But of course, the theme for today's discussion is, of course, the super hurricane Melissa. It moved very slowly through the Caribbean Sea and went right over Jamaica, highly populated areas of Jamaica. Okay, and it's caused billions of dollars worth, and I'm saying dollars, but let's say pounds worth of damage to the island. You and I, of course, Lee, will recall Hurricane Gilbert.
We do.
Yep. And Gilbert, of course, was a Category 4 at the time. Okay. But the experience of Gilbert, it took more than 10 years for the island to recover. Okay. I know that since then, building standards have risen. There's no doubt about that. But there's still far too many buildings which are really relatively flimsy buildings, but not really suitable for a place where you could have high winds of this type. We've got you and I live in buildings here in Britain which are made of bricks. Majority are made of bricks, whereas in Jamaica that is not so. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, when you saw the pictures, the videos of what had happened, how did it make you feel? How did it make you feel when you watched what was happening on the island?
Well, I'm a persistent visitor to the island. I spent 18 weeks of this year already in 3 6-week blocks in Jamaica. I have property out there. My late father worked hard and left us some property, and my wife's parents are in St. Elizabeth, of course, one of the most affected areas, and we have family around. So I'm watching in the 10 days or so when we got the heads up around Hurricane Watch, because I always watch those video channels about weather patterns in Jamaica to get and saw the storm developing.
Yes.
I was extraordinarily worried, particularly as its predicted intensity was due to increase. And so I've written a piece about it, about, when a Jamaican parent calls to a child to come, and he says, "Stop your coming and come." Well, it got like that with a bit Melissa, because we kept hearing she was coming, coming, and in the end we was like, "Oh, for God's sake, stop your coming and come." You know what I mean? Because the stress of waiting for it was incredible, and it's very difficult because like my mother-in-law was traumatized by Beryl 16 months ago, and she still has the PTSD from that. And when I was there recently, she would say, "Lee, these are things you only you should go through once in your life. Never again would I want to go through that." And she's had to be on the island as a storm approaches that is even more powerful than Beryl. And I don't think that, as much as people can look at the physical damage, and that's incredibly important, the infrastructure damage is important, but you also think about the mental stress of living with that and coping with that. And stress is the silent killer, isn't it? We all know that. It creeps up. And so I get a sense of an island that is fundamentally in need of, aid and development in terms of improving infrastructure to sustain extreme weather extremities. But I'm also concerned that there is no therapeutic space to deal with some of the horrific scenes that people will have saw, effect that has on their own mental health and well-being. So,
Thank you for that insight. Because you are right. And as you were speaking of, he's right. I've not seen in the news columns, or local papers, or even the general discourse, an appreciation that these are traumatic themes.
yeah. Yes, they are, and it's and part of the reason why I've instantly pulled together, a meeting, because yes, I do want to send all of the usual stuff, but I also want to try and point to people the importance of giving people the therapeutic space to recover from something which has been beyond human experience for most people.
Agreed. There's a number of websites which you can see via the cams, the local cameras, the actual the event as they take place live. And I have not experienced wind above 80 miles an hour. Okay,
Right.
And that was terrifying enough.
That's right.
Imagine a wind that's 185 miles an hour. Oh my dear!
I'd say it's beyond human conception. I think one of the feelings for me is that I was already traumatized, because if you've been watching the scenes in the Middle East, you could not be traumatized. But as it sort of wound its way through, I became more inured. This is not me being a lack of compassion. It's just how you mentally cope with life, isn't it? You become more inured to it. Slightly thicker skin. Yes. You might become a little intolerant with it, to protect your own mental health, really, because if you keep seeing that stuff, it has an impact. When the hurricane came back, I found the collective impact of all of that coming back to me all at once, and I realised very quickly that actually there is sort of a compound traumatic interest building up in relation to other issues, but for which this hurricane now is compounded. So, again, I have to be very careful about how I watch my own vulnerability to catastrophe and tragedy, because if I don't maintain my balance and mental health, then I'll become erratic and irrational and reactionary as a consequence of being overcome by emotion. So, it's very important that people, yes, do look for to give financial aid, and that is incredibly important. But equally important,
can I get onto that? Because you've talked about yourself, and that's what was important to hear your personal reaction. What about your family and your friends? How have they reacted to the scenes coming out of Jamaica?
Well, my wife has been living on her last nerves. Obviously, her parents are still there in their late 80s and 90s. Thankfully, we have heard that they're all okay with minor damage to the house, even though they were in St. Elizabeth. So there's some blessed relief. But if we have to live through this every year, I don't know how even we're going to cope, much less how Jamaicans are going to cope. But I think we're all staggered and appalled. Partly, there's some talk about, is this being over-amplified because there was a sort of plethora of AIs around. So that was a topic of conversation around, are we being hyped? Is this being overhyped? Then there was the whole sort of cloud seeding, whether this was a deliberate attempt to ruin the island and the sort of small c conspiracy theories in relation to that in some of our. Someone was just absolutely petrified into paralysis. Because what can you do? You know that your family is living in some insubstantive accommodation somewhere in the hurricane's path that would, blow, that would fall over with a strong breeze, much less a hurricane. And you've got to sit here and think. And I think that's what got me. That's why I had to do something, because I felt completely powerless. And I don't like feeling powerless. And I refused to accept that I was powerless. But I could only find power and redemption in working with other people to try and bring people together to resolve it. I've always.
To all family and friends of Jamaica, Superstorm Hurricane Melissa emergency meeting being held on Thursday, the 7th of November, to start at 7 p.m, being held at the Caribou Education Centre at 7 Gresham Road, Gresham Road, London, SW9 7PH. It's important you turn up on time. It's the Motivator here. I hope you enjoyed that fantastic podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, or at the very least, give us a like. And don't forget the next video on screen. Click through and enjoy.